2026 Spring Trademark Knowledge Exam Candidate Orientation Session. My name is Jen Slobodkin, and I am joined today by my colleague Tifan. Tifan will introduce herself and explain the interpretation option to listen in French.
Bonjour, hi everybody. My name is Tifan. I work with Jen as an administrator. Pour nos agents francophones, vous avez l'opportunité d'écouter ce webinaire en français. Pour cela, vous cliquez en bas sur le rond et cliquez sur le globe où il est inscrit interprétation. Merci beaucoup et bon webinaire.
Merci, Tifan.
So first, let's discuss about the agenda. We're going to talk a lot about the exam day, the test specifications, the exam platform that we will be using, the candidate instructions, results and scoring, the process, the FAQ, and then after that, we're going to spend some time answering your questions. If you do have any question, we're going to ask you to wait. You can type them in, but wait until the end, as very often the questions that agents in training have during our webinar, they are answered during our presentation. Thank you very much. Exam date. So as you're all aware, the exam will be on May 26, 2026 from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time.
I'll just make a special note of that time again. We run this exam in Eastern Time, so make sure that you are logged in and ready to do the exam around 12 p.m. Eastern Time, and we'll go through the time in a little while, but it's very important that you remember these times are in Eastern Time, so you need to adapt when you're starting in your own time zone if you're not on the Eastern Time schedule. Okay, let's get into the test specifications. CPATA develops each examination using a set of test specifications approved by the registration committee to ensure that exams test defensively. The test specifications, which you can find on our website, and I'll show you after the presentation where you can find them, outline what an exam will measure in terms of content domain, which includes areas and weights, as well as guidelines on how the content is measured. Such guidelines are expressed in terms of structure, so they provide information about format, length, and cognitive level, and context, which are the circumstances in which examination questions are framed and that can influence their interpretation. The content weights for the qualifying exams were each set by a group of practicing agents with guidance from a psychometrician. These weights were informed by average criticality and importance ratings from the large-scale competency validation survey, which was administered in September of 2022. The recommended content weights were presented to the registration committee for approval. The knowledge examinations are set for 4 hours. They are closed book and consist of 135 multiple choice questions, up to 10% of which are marked as non-scored or experimental. The non-scored items do not count toward the final score, but are used to gather data on item performance for future test forms. For the examinations, the non-scored items are selected after the exam based on an item analysis. In future years, the non-scored items will likely be selected in advance of the exam, though this could change following item analysis. Candidates are not advised which items are non-scored to ensure valid data collection. In the case of these knowledge exams, 3 hours would typically be adequate for most test takers. Given that time pressure is not a tested construct on this exam, and given accessibility goals, the time to complete the exam was set at 4 hours. The knowledge examinations use a closed book format, where the items are designed to test general understanding of core concepts rather than information retrieval. Test takers are encouraged to prepare by reviewing source materials with the goal of understanding key concepts and familiarizing themselves with important sections of relevant legislation. A closed book format was selected for the knowledge exams for the following reasons. Test quality. The ideal knowledge-based test items focus on understanding of core concepts rather than on minute details or information retrieval skills. Such items better test core constructs for improved validity and require less frequent updates for improved reliability. Reduced time pressures. A closed book exam tends to rely less on time pressure. This can be especially beneficial to those who are multilingual, those with test anxiety, and those requiring various accommodations. The examination is administered using a computer-based platform supported by Paradigm Testing. The examination will be remotely proctored using live proctors from Monitor EDU. French-speaking proctors are available upon request. Please contact the registration department at CPATA as soon as possible to arrange for a French-speaking proctor for both the live proctor check-in as well as the exam date if you wish to have one.
Here are the requirements for taking the exam. The specific technical requirements are available in the instructions and protocol guide, which are posted on the website. In order to complete the exams, you will need the following: a laptop or desktop computer, the most recent version of the secure browser. This is really important. You must make sure that you uninstall any previous versions of the secure browser and install the newest version. Even if the link is the same, the actual application has been updated. Note, there are French directions located at the bottom. Please scroll to access them if needed. You will also need a mobile phone running at least Android OS 6.0 or Apple iOS 12.0 with a functioning camera and microphone. Google Meet application downloaded to your mobile device. A steady and reliable internet connection. Wi-Fi will be required for mobile streaming with a minimum upload speed of 1 megabytes per second. A 6-foot extension cord and phone cord. A phone stand or something to prop the mobile phone on. Government-issued ID. Candidate ID, which is provided on your confirmation of exam registration that will be issued by CPATA in the next few days. And finally, a quiet venue. You must be alone in the room. Here are some tips for setting up your room. There is a video linked in the setup guide. Please keep these things in mind when setting up your testing environment. There should be adequate lighting. Walls should be blank. Your table or desk should be clear, other than your laptop computer. The areas beneath the desk and chair should be clear. The computer and mobile phone should be plugged in for the duration of the exam. You should have within reach a 6-foot extension cord and use it, if requested by the proctor to move the computer and mobile phone. You should inform other individuals that may share space with you about your exam date and time, and confirm that they will remain quiet during the exam and will not enter the exam room. You must be alone in the exam room for the duration of the exam. No one can enter the exam room during the exam. And finally, non-required electronics and any security or recording devices in the room must be turned off and put away in a safe place so that you will not be able to reach them. Every candidate must test the exam platform with an exam proctor. This is true even if you have previously tested before. The live proctor check-in instructions are provided in the instructions and protocol guide. Proctors will be available 24/7 from May 18th to May 22nd. You will be able to test your computer system and ensure everything works properly before the exams are written the following week. This is not a full mock practice exam. You will only be presented with the published practice exam questions. This is to give candidates more familiarity with the platform and what to expect on exam days. The instructions for connecting with the proctor for the checking are published in the examination instructions protocol on the preparation page for the trademark exams. The live proctor checking is a mandatory step and must be completed before exam day. Its purpose is to verify that your exam environment, equipment, and technical setup meet all requirements. During the checking, you will become familiar with the exam platform and proctoring process, which helps you know what to expect on exam day. Completing the checking in advance can reduce stress and help avoid last-minute technical or setup issues that could delay or disrupt your exam. Please allow a minimum of 15 minutes for the check-in session to ensure optimal preparation and a smooth exam experience. And if I may add, that the live proctor checking must be done in the same place, the same office where you will be taking the exam.
That's a really good point. Thank you, Tifan. Okay, so let's go through some candidate instructions in preparation for the exam days, or exam day in this circumstance. What is very important that you do is test your equipment. You need to do this ahead of time and not on the exam day, which is why we have a week available before the exam to do the live proctor check-in. This will ensure that you can use the computer that you're going to be using for the exam to check the secure browser software to make sure that it's working for you and that the functionality is working for you. Make sure that your room setup is sufficient and appropriate for the exam day, and to go through any other questions with the live proctors that you might have before the exam is actually written. The instructions and protocol guide that is posted on the website provides you with step-by-step instructions for the live proctor check-in and preparation for the exam days. ID. It's very important that you have government-issued ID with you for the proctor check-in and on exam days. The government-issued ID should have your photograph on it and your name, and the proctor will check to make sure that you are the person that should be writing the examination. And your candidate number. This is a unique number that is provided to each candidate for the exam administration. It is not your CPATA ID. The candidate number will be issued to you in your confirmation of registration, which is scheduled to be sent out by the end of this week. So if you don't have a candidate number yet, then that's okay because we haven't sent them out yet. We will be sending them out this Friday. Candidate instructions for exam day. So step one would be to connect with a proctor and fill out the sign-in form. You can start doing that around 12 p.m. Eastern time. I wouldn't start any later than 12:30 Eastern time to ensure that you have gone through the proper security protocol and check-in process, and to make sure that you start the exam on time. This step is very important. If you don't connect with a proctor, then you are not going to be able to access the exam. You have to connect with the proctor first. The proctor is going to go through the registration process. They're going to check your ID. They're going to do the room and the system check. And then finally, they will provide you with your login information, which includes the examination link and login credentials that you're going to need to actually access the exam. It's important that you connect with a proctor before the exam start time at 1 o'clock. Proctors are often assisting more than one candidate log into the exam. So to help ensure everyone starts on time, it's helpful to connect starting around noon and no later than 12:30, as I mentioned. All of these instructions are provided in the instructions and protocol guide. Step number 2 is to have Google Meet pre-downloaded on your cell phone. This will allow for the proctoring process and will ensure that the live proctor is able to watch you do the exam during the examination. Step 3 is to remember to have your government picture ID and candidate number ready for the check-in process. And as I mentioned, after you complete the check-in process with the proctor, they will release the codes to log into the exam platform to start the examination. During the exam, you may not access the following types of personal items. You cannot have a mobile phone with you, but there is an asterisk there because the only mobile phone that you're allowed to have is the one that you're using for proctoring. You can't have access to any other mobile phones or electronic devices. So if you have multiple mobile phones for whatever reason, any one that you're not using for the proctoring process needs to be safely stowed away. You're not allowed to have headphones or headsets, either wired or Bluetooth. You are not permitted to have handheld computers or other electronic devices such as iPads or other types of tablets. You're not allowed to have a watch with you. And if those of you who have gone onto the website already have seen on the practice exam, we have a counter in the top right-hand corner of each exam, which counts down from the 4-hour mark. So there's no reason for you to have a watch with you during the examination. You're not allowed to have a wallet with you or a purse or a bag or a coat of any kind. You are also not permitted to have any books, notes, or any other materials. So there's no scrap paper permitted for this examination, no writing utensils. The only thing that you should have with you is your computer, your mobile phone, which is hooked up for the proctoring process, the extension cords, as Tifan was describing, and nothing else available. You also may not wear hats or other head coverings unless they're worn as a religious observance, and you have submitted a request for an accommodation to allow for that type of head covering. Finally, you cannot read the exam out loud unless you have received approved accommodations. So everything needs to be quiet. You're not permitted to read anything out loud. And the last thing, which isn't on this slide, but is important to remember, is that smart glasses are not permitted for this examination. So nothing in your glasses is permitted to record in any way, shape, or form. And the proctors will do a check to make sure that your glasses are just normal, unconnected glasses. A couple of other things to note for exam days. We have something called incident reports where Monitor EDU uses Google Meet to support their proctoring services. This allows exam sessions to be recorded. So everyone's exam session is recorded and the recordings are saved with Monitor EDU for a finite period of time. Therefore, if something occurs during your exam that you think we should be aware of, you can send a request to schedule@monitoredu.com with your name, candidate number, and the date of the exam when the incident occurred to request that they share the exam recording with us for further investigation. We also can submit requests to Monitor EDU to confirm if there is any exam integrity or security issues when somebody is writing the exam. The request must be submitted to Monitor EDU prior to the release of the examination results, which in this case will be in July. Snacks and water. You may have a drink with you, but it must be in a clear vessel, like a clear bottle, a cup, or a glass, with no labels. If you have a bottle with a label on it, you will be asked to remove or cover the label. You may also have snacks with you, but they need to be in a clear Ziploc style bag so that the proctor can see what is in the bag. Also, please tell the proctor at the beginning when you're checking in that you have snacks with you during the exam so that they are aware. You'll receive 2 email confirmations from Monitor EDU. One will be the week before the live proctor check-in, just reiterating the instructions for the live proctor check-in week, and the other will be the Friday before the exam is being administered. And that's again to reiterate some system setup information. Earplugs. If you wish to wear earplugs during the exam, they need to be new foam earplugs that are still in their package. Candidates must open them in front of the proctor. They must advise CPATA if they wish to use earplugs prior to the start of the exam so that we can inform the proctors. Jewelry. To support the integrity of the exam, you'll be asked to remove jewelry, such as earrings, necklaces, bracelets, watches, etc. Given that this is a closed book exam, you cannot have any materials with you at all, as I mentioned. You cannot have scrap paper or anything to write with. This would impact the security of the exam. Multiple monitors are not permitted. Candidates can only use one monitor, but may choose which monitor they use if they have a multiple monitor setup on their computer. Bathroom breaks. Time is not added back or paused for bathroom breaks, but they are permitted. Time is only paused or added back for those with approved accommodations. When a candidate leaves the testing area for a bathroom break, proctors will perform another security check when the candidate re-enters the testing area. Candidates who are absent from the testing area for an extended period of time, for example, longer than a couple of minutes, or who take frequent breaks will be flagged for exam security. If exam security issues are detected, the candidate's examination attempt may be invalidated and other actions may be taken. Technical issues. In the event of any technical issues, candidates must get the proctor's attention. This will allow the candidate to communicate with the proctor who will then assist them. Time is only added back or the exam is paused if the issue was beyond the candidate's control. You must get the proctor's attention and make a request for additional time for this to be considered. We will go through the process of how to get the proctor's attention later on in the presentation.
Thank you, Jen. You have a maximum of 4 hours to complete your examination. All exams will be submitted 4 hours after you have started your exam. It is your responsibility to ensure that your environment is adequate for testing. The examination is being displayed in the language of choice you selected on your registration form. Computer problems, internet-related difficulties, and connectivity issues, including problems resulting from a power outage, should be directed to the live proctor during the exam. As this is an individual examination, you are strictly forbidden from consulting any other individuals or materials. Let's start. Any time missed due to late start, which was not attributed to a technology issue, will be deducted from the total examination time. Read the questions carefully. Exam aid translations. A PDF of the French version of the exam has been included as an exam aid in the platform. You can review the French questions and response options using that PDF, if needed throughout the exam. Exit survey. Upon submission of the exam, you will be presented with a link to an optional survey that asks about any issues you may have experienced during the exam. To complete the survey, click on Survey on the submission page. A new window will open with the survey questions. Please complete the survey and click Submit. Once the survey has been submitted, close the Survey tab and then click on Close on the examination submission page. Note that once your exam has been submitted and you're presented with the survey page, you will not be able to go back into the exam. The system will ask you to confirm you wish to submit your exam before the submission is made.
Thank you, Tifan. Just one note on the exam aid translation. I know we indicated that the French version would be available as an exam aid, but the English version will also be available. So when we do a run through of the platform, I'll show you where you can find the exam aids, and both the English and the French versions will be available as PDFs on the exam aids in the platform. And this will allow candidates to review the questions in either language, even if their language of choice is displaying the question in one way on the platform. And the other reason we do this is just for any reason, if the exam question or what response options are cut off because the exam window is smaller than what was tested on, then you can review the entire question and all of the response options in full through the exam aids. Okay, so let's take a look at the platform. We'll just give you some screenshots of this now, and then we're going to go through it at the end of the presentation using the practice links that are on our website. Once you have connected with the proctor and been checked in, you'll receive the link to the exam. So on the login page, you will enter your username and your password, and then you will click on Login. You will see the exams on the dashboard and you'll click on Start Test to begin the exam. Then you'll be asked to read the instructions and agree to the candidate agreement. The screenshot that's on this presentation right now is an abbreviated version of the instructions, and so is the candidate agreement. So once we actually go to the platform on our website, you'll be able to see the full candidate instructions and the full candidate agreement. And I recommend that candidates actually read all of this well ahead of time. You can do so right after this webinar if you wish. And continue to familiarize yourself with the instructions and with the candidate agreement so that you can just go right into the exam when you launch the exam on exam day. The instructions that are on the practice exam and the candidate agreement on the practice exam will be the same that you see during the live proctor check-in week as well as on exam day. So you can definitely familiarize yourself with that well ahead of when the exam is being written. Now, it's important to know that you have different options for navigating through the questions on the platform. You can use the previous or next buttons. You can click on the question numbers that are at the bottom of the screen, or you can navigate to attempted, incomplete, or flagged questions using the question review function. That being said, we strongly recommend that candidates confirm that all questions have been answered before they submit their exam. So remember, there's 135 questions on this exam. Questions that are blue have been answered. Questions that are green have not yet been answered. I encourage you to check the question review section in the bottom right corner to ensure that you've answered all of the questions before you submit your exam. Here is a sample view of a multiple choice question on the platform. So I'm just going to look over to my other screen here because it's actually a bit bigger for me to see. But you'll see right here, this is the first question. The stem of the question is located at the top. And then you have the 4 response options with radio buttons underneath that. To select your answer, you just click on the radio button beside the answer you want to select. And then you can click on next to move on to the next question. If you're past question number 1, you can click on previous to return to the previous question. You can also bookmark the question. So if you don't know the answer right away, or you want to review that answer to that question at the end of the exam, then you can bookmark that by clicking on the bookmark button. In the bottom left corner of the screen, you'll see there are the question numbers. So you have 1, 2, and 3 that are in green. This notes that there are 3 questions on this exam and that none of them have been answered yet because they turn blue once you've selected an answer. On our exam, there will be 135 questions along the bottom. So you're able to navigate through those questions by clicking on the question numbers. As I mentioned, clicking on the previous or next buttons, or on the question review. On the bottom left corner of the screen as well, underneath those questions or those question numbers, you will see a little progress bar. So right now it shows there's 0% complete because none of the questions have been answered yet. So that will slowly start to progress toward 100% as you answer the questions in the exam. To the right of that, there is a little font button. And if you click on that font button, then you can either increase or decrease the size of the text on the platform to your own preference. So if you want to see the questions bigger, you can make the font bigger. If you want to make them smaller, then you can make the font smaller in that section. Moving to the right of the screen, in the top right-hand corner, you will see the counter or the clock, which counts down from 4 hours while you progress through the exam. So if you're ever wondering how much time you have left, you can check the top right corner and it will show you how much time you have left on the exam. Below that is the tab for the exam aids. So this is where you will see a little notepad feature, which looks like this little green button here. And we'll go through that when we go through the platform later. But that's where you can type some notes for yourself if you wanted to type any notes for yourself while you're progressing through the exam. And this is also where you will find the PDFs of the exam in both English and French. So if for whatever reason you want to review the question in the other language, you can look at the PDFs there. Or if, again, if there's any reason that the question or any of the response options are cut off because your monitor is smaller, then you can also view the entire question and all of the response boxes or all the response options on the PDFs. Down in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you'll see the question review functionality. So if you click on question review, then you can see how many questions you've attempted, which are incomplete, which have been bookmarked, which are called flagged on the question review, and then or view all of the questions. So that's another navigation feature. And finally, in the very bottom right corner is the submit button. So once you have completed the entire exam and you've reviewed all of your responses or the responses that you wanted to review again, and you're done, you're sure you're done, then you can click on submit. You'll be presented with a pop-up screen that says, are you sure you want to submit? You would click on yes if you're sure. If you accidentally clicked it, you can click no, and it'll bring you back to the exam. Or if you click yes, it will present you with the survey screen. Here is another type of question that you won't see on the knowledge exam. This is more skills exam in terms of a sample view, but sometimes questions have more detailed background information. And so you'll see here there's a fairly significant passage that's written on the screen. Again, for the multiple choice exams, it will be this type of sample view, not so much this type of sample view. But the two functions that I wanted to highlight on this screen are the highlight function and the strike through function. So on the exam, while you're reading a question or response options, if you wanted to select text to highlight it or to strike it through, then you would just use your cursor on your mouse, select the text that you want to highlight or strike through, and then proceed with that. If you want to remove that, then you would re-highlight the text and then remove the highlight or remove the strike through. But that's just an additional feature to help you kind of focus your thoughts on a particular question or passage. We've already gone through the exam aids, so I'm not going to go through that again. Finally, another note on the font size and the screen zoom. So again, if you have a smaller monitor where the text may be cut off for some questions, there are 3 different ways to view the entire question. You can use the font increase or decrease functionality that I just showed you to change the size of the text on the platform. You can use Control, or I believe on a Mac it would be Command, plus or minus to zoom in or out of the exam window screen. Or you can review the question in the exam aid PDF. So if you come across a question where some of the text is cut off, then you can use one or more of those 3 options to be able to view the entire question or all of the response options. So there's a couple of troubleshooting items we wanted to go through as well today. One would be power outage. So if you experience a sudden loss of electricity that interrupts the exam delivery or causes your device to shut down, then you need to first and foremost remain calm. If the computer is off, then the exam timer should actually be paused. The candidate should get their proctor's attention to let them know what has happened, and then the proctor will guide them through what to do next. Monitor EDU will escalate issues to CPATA, so I am actually in something called a command center during the exam, and any issues that are experienced by candidates are escalated to me in real time, and we discuss how to proceed, whether it be to add some additional minutes if the candidate lost any time, or whatever it might be. Network connectivity issues. Problems with internet connectivity that prevent a test taker from accessing the exam platform or causing the exam to freeze or disconnect. If you have internet connectivity issues, again, you will need to let the proctor know right away. The proctor will then ask the candidate to restart the computer. While this is happening, if the candidate has access to the internet router or modem, they will need to restart that as well. If the issue does not resolve itself, again, Monitor EDU will escalate this to CPATA, to myself, and we'll talk about how to proceed. Technical issues or software malfunction within the platform. Sometimes issues with the exam software, such as errors, bugs, incompatibilities, or crashes that interfere with exam delivery or prevent test takers from progressing through the exam, can happen. If a candidate experiences any of these issues, they need to contact the proctor right away for troubleshooting assistance. Again, and this is very, very important, if you experience any issues, you need to get the proctor's attention. If you don't get the proctor's attention, then there's not going to be any way for anyone to assist you in resolving the issue. And so we have had candidates who do not raise any issues with their proctor, and then on the exit survey say that they experienced an issue that impacted their ability to demonstrate their competency, but there was no way for us to have known that if they weren't raised with the proctor during the exam. So it's very important that if you have any issues like a power outage, a network connectivity issue, or any other technical difficulties, that you get your proctor's attention. So Tifan is now going to explain how to do that.
Thank you, Jen. If you need the proctor at all during the exam, please say your name and raise your hand and wait for the proctor to connect back through audio with you. Proctors can manage more than one test taker at the same time. So if it takes them a minute to respond, it could be that they're assisting another test taker. If they do not respond, please pick up your phone and wave at the camera or hold your phone so they can see that you need something. Please do not disconnect from the video chat without talking to the proctor first.
Thank you, Tifan. Now I'd like to turn our attention to results and scoring. There's no single method to determine a defensible pass mark for all types of tests or all purposes. Different methods are suited to different circumstances. As a licensing body, CPATA needed to select an approach to standard setting based on the purpose of the examination, which is to assess entry-level competency, as well as how closely the method aligned with assessment goals. For a high-stakes licensing exam, in other words, a test with important consequences, the selected standard setting approach needed to relate to the purpose of the exam, be appropriate to the level of complexity of the competencies being assessed by the exam, be appropriate to the format of the exam. So for example, there's a different standard setting approach for multiple choice exams versus the skills exams. Be supported by scholarly research, which supports its use, and for practical reasons should reflect the availability of resources. In 2023, the Registration Committee of CPATA approved the methodologies which are used on the new exams to determine the pass marks. For the knowledge exam, they approved a modified Angoff method. The modified Angoff method is the most well-studied and documented standard setting method. It's the most commonly used method for setting cut scores in credentialing contexts, and it uses a standards referenced approach, which means that the pass mark reflects the standard and expectations of the profession. A minimum standard will be determined through a systematic standard setting process, which involves a panel of subject matter experts who are practicing agents. These panelists make ratings based on the expected performance of a minimally competent candidate for each exam item. The total number of scored questions that a candidate answers correctly on the exam, each worth 1 point, will be compared to this minimum standard to determine the result. All candidates will receive a performance report which outlines the candidate's performance on the trademark knowledge exam. This report includes the overall result of competency demonstrated or competency not yet demonstrated. The result, competency demonstrated, means that performance on the exam met or exceeded the minimum standard, showing a general understanding of the core concepts associated with trademark practice. This result indicates that the candidate has the entry-level foundational knowledge necessary to support future learning and development in this area. Subject to meeting other requirements, like completion of the 24-month training requirement, this result means that the candidate is eligible to register for the trademark agent skills examination. The result competency not yet demonstrated means that performance on the exam did not meet the minimum standard. The candidate did not yet prove a sufficient understanding of the core concepts associated with trademark practice. The candidate may have gaps in their understanding of foundational trademark knowledge and the application of key trademark principles. This result suggests that the candidate needs further preparation and study before reattempting the trademark knowledge exam, and definitely before being eligible for the trademark agent skills exam or engaging in trademark agent practice. The performance report also includes an overall performance descriptor that compares the candidate's performance, which is the number of questions answered correctly, to the minimum standard. This information, along with measurement variability data, informs an estimate of how close the candidate's performance was to the passing standard. Measurement variability data is a statistical summary that represents the dispersion or spread of data points in a data set. The performance categories are above the standard. The candidate's performance on the exam was above the passing standard, demonstrating competence beyond the minimum requirements. Just meets the standard. The candidate's performance on the exam just meets the passing standard, demonstrating a satisfactory level of competence. Approaches the standard. The candidate's performance on the exam was close to the passing standard, showing some potential. However, some improvement is needed to meet the standard. And below the standard. The candidate's performance on the exam was below the passing standard, and improvement is needed. Candidates who receive an overall result of competency demonstrated would receive a corresponding performance descriptor of above the standard or just meets the standard. Candidates who receive an overall result of competency not yet demonstrated would receive a corresponding performance descriptor of approaches the standard or below the standard. Finally, the performance report lists knowledge areas tested on the exam, as well as the percentage of questions on the exam that are related to each question. This information is also found in the test specifications. Knowledge areas with more questions have a greater effect on your overall performance. The performance details show whether the candidate's performance in each knowledge area meets, means equal to or exceeds, or is below a minimal threshold that is set for each area through the standard setting process. It is important to keep in mind that only the total score determines the result. There is no separate pass mark for each knowledge area, so stronger performance in one area can offset weaker performance in other areas. Keep in mind that the area level results are based on fewer questions than the overall result, making them less reliable for predicting future performance. For this reason, the meets or below insights should only be used to help a candidate better self-assess their knowledge of these areas, not as a definitive statement of their ability. Now, we understand that test takers may be used to seeing specific scores on exams, and that these scores provide a tangible measure of performance. However, the primary purpose of our exams is not to rank order test takers or precisely measure their depth of knowledge or skill. Rather, it's to determine whether a test taker has achieved a certain level of competence. The important question is not how much better did one person do compared to another, but has this person met the minimum level of competence required to practice safely and effectively. We can think of the licensing process in terms of a series of hurdles. The goal of completing these hurdles isn't necessarily about how much faster one person is than another. The primary objective is to determine whether each person can successfully complete each hurdle. A person who clears the hurdles by 1 inch is just as successful in this context as a person who clears them by a foot. In a similar vein, our qualifying examinations work more like a series of hurdles rather than a race against competitors. As such, the score isn't as meaningful as the overall decision of competency demonstrated or competency not yet demonstrated. We can also think of a pass mark as analogous to the height requirement for an amusement park ride. When you approach a ride, there is a sign indicating a height that guests must be a certain height tall to ride the ride. The point of this measure isn't to see who the tallest person is, but to ensure that everyone on the ride meets the minimum height for safety reasons. Similarly, our exam isn't about who achieves the highest score, but whether each candidate has reached the necessary height or level of competence required to practice the profession safely and effectively. In addition, focusing on the result rather than the numeric score may reduce unhelpful competition amongst test takers, which can then lessen test-related stress. Our goal is to ensure that each licensed individual is qualified and competent. We have chosen this methodology of reporting for our exams because we believe that this method best serves that purpose. This approach focuses on the goal of achieving general proficiency rather than encouraging test takers to chase after a high score. So not only do you not receive numerical information on your performance report, but we also do not publish the cut score for each examination because the cut score can change from administration to administration. And so the cut score for the winter exam might not be the same cut score that will be for the spring exam. And this will also change from year to year. So instead of publishing that numerical information, what we do publish on our website is the pass rate for an examination. So under About Us and then Reports and then Exam Reports, we provide a pass rate report for each exam administration, and it also tracks the pass rate from each administration in a chart for each of those reports. Finally, you might be wondering if you can challenge your result. The short answer is no, you cannot challenge your result. The long answer is the process used to create, administer, and score the CPATA knowledge exams employed psychometric best practices at every stage to ensure that it was valid, reliable, defensible, and fair. With respect to item development, practicing agents were recruited to develop the item bank for the knowledge exam. Each agent received a development assignment, which was coordinated to ensure the mix of items and their content area aligned with the proportion of items that appear in each test form as required by the test specifications. They were required to adhere to an item development guide, which helped item developers create quality test items. This guide outlined fundamentals, recommended practices specific to developing multiple choice questions, and writing conventions that apply to all items of all types. After development, items went through an item review process. This process was a rigorous review that ensured that questions were appropriate and that the answer key was correct. This included several steps, including a peer review, where an independent subject matter expert, which was someone other than the person who developed the item, reviewed the item for content and quality. Then it went through a psychometric review. A psychometrician reviewed the items to confirm that they adhered to defensible item development practices. After the items were translated, it went through a translation review, where another group of independent subject matter experts, who happened to be bilingual practicing agents not involved in the development process, reviewed the items to ensure that items in each language were equivalent and meant the same thing. Finally, the items went through an exam advisory group review. This is a subgroup of the Skills Exam Advisory Group, and they complete a final review to identify any outstanding issues or concerns. After all of the reviews were completed, the exam form was assembled in accordance with psychometric best practices and the approved test specifications. The form was assembled and randomly sequenced in a way to balance content area and cognitive level. Once the form was assembled, it was piloted by a group of practicing agents, and an item analysis was conducted by a psychometrician to flag items that required further review. Any outstanding issues related to the items were then resolved. Now, after the exam is administered, we complete a standard setting process, as previously described when I spoke about results and scoring. During this process, the psychometricians conduct another item analysis with the data from the actual exam administration. The exam advisory group members then complete something called a key validation process, where they review and validate items that are flagged during the analysis. During this process, the answer key may be corrected if, for example, the item was miskeyed. An item could be scored with 2 or more keyed answers if, for example, 2 options were considered correct and not caught in any of the previous item review processes. All candidates may be awarded credit for an item, or the item may be removed from scoring. The standard setting process occurs to derive the proposed pass mark. The registration committee then meets to approve the pass mark, and the results file will be generated using that information. The results file is then reviewed for accuracy before generating the performance reports. In summary, we've implemented checks and controls in the development, review, and scoring process to verify the accuracy of the results. This includes investigating and resolving any discrepancies or questions before releasing the performance reports. In addition, before notifying any test takers of a result of competency not yet demonstrated, we engage in an administrative review of that result. This review is automatic and at no cost to the test taker. For this reason, the performance report results are considered final when they are published. The knowledge examinations are administered twice per year since 2025, once in the winter and once in the spring. Because agents in training complete their training programs at different times throughout the year, and the dates of the exams are fixed on an annual basis, to ensure fairness, all agents in training are permitted to attempt the knowledge exam up to 4 times. Remedial training and education will be required in the following circumstances. The agent in training does not attempt the exam within 2 years after the day on which they complete their training program, or the agent in training does not demonstrate competency on the knowledge exam after 4 attempts, or the agent in training has attempted the knowledge exam, was not able to demonstrate their competency, and requests a delay in writing a subsequent administration of the exam for a reason beyond their control without attempting it again within a period of 2 years. So if there are extenuating circumstances or irregularities that occur during an exam, we use various methods to detect and address these issues and irregularities. At the end of each exam administration, as we were discussing, we solicit feedback from test takers through an exit survey about extenuating circumstances, such as compassionate consideration, medical reasons, or process anomalies that a test taker believes materially impaired their exam performance. Additionally, we actively seek and analyze information from test takers, exam administrators, and experts to identify irregularities in an exam administration, including misconduct. In the case of extenuating circumstances or irregularities, we reserve the right to withhold any result, to nullify or invalidate an exam submission, to subject any exam or part thereof to further review, and take other action, including disciplinary action if appropriate, to preserve the integrity of the licensing process. So the next administration after the spring exam will be in winter 2027 on February 9th. If after this exam administration you experienced significant process anomalies or a medical issue that you think materially impacted your ability to demonstrate competency on the exam, then you would be able to submit a request to nullify your examination attempt. As long as the request is submitted within 2 weeks of the results being released, then the registrar will consider that request. There are resources available on our website to assist candidates in preparing for the knowledge exam. This includes the candidate guide, the setup guide, or what we refer to the information and instructions guide, what to study, the test specifications, and the sample exam. So I'll just take a few minutes to go through what the website looks like when we finish this presentation. Stefan, were you going to talk about the contact us?
Yes. So if you have any questions regarding the proctor, the checking, etc., you can contact our provider Monitor EDU. You can send them an email with the email on the presentation, or you can speak to a live agent, so you have the link. And any other issues, questions, concerns, just feel free to email or call us. I think now everybody knows our email address. Don't hesitate if you have any issue before, even after the exams, if you're not sure what to do. And I think that's it. So Jen is going to show you, maybe, are you going to show them the candidate guides?
Yes, I'm going to go through the website now. So now would be the time for you to type any questions. I see some things might have come in while we were doing the presentation, but if you have any other questions, you can start typing them into the chat feature or the Q&A feature, and then we will go through those as soon as we're done going through the overview of the website.
And
So I'm just going
if I
to,
may add,
yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
Jen, if I may add, this presentation will be available on our website as well as the PowerPoint.
Yes, within the next couple of days,
Yes.
we will be posting the recording as well as the PDF of the presentation on the website, and we'll show you where to find that as well. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and bring up end the slideshow. I'll bring up the 2 pages that I wanted to show you. Okay, so we'll reshare my screen. Yes, this is the one I want to share. Okay. Okay, so now we are looking, and again, I apologize, I'm looking off to my other screen right now. So I have the pages available for the trademark exams. One is the English one, the other one is the French one, but it's the same setup. So under agents in training, and then trademark agent qualification exams, and then preparation, you have a bunch of information. Again, that's the agents in training, exams for trademark agents, and then the preparation page here. The first thing that we'll go through are the candidate guides. So we have the trademark knowledge exam candidate guide that is listed at the top. And then the third link down are the examination instructions and protocol guide. This is the guide that you look at to get information and instructions for connecting with the proctor during the live proctor check-in week, for also downloading the secure browser, for your room setup. All of that information is in this exam instructions and protocol guide. Then we'll move down to what to study. So in this section here, if you click on knowledge examination and the knowledge examination here, then we have the preparation resource. And the preparation resource was something that we created to really link the competency profiles with the test specifications. So you can see here about 50% of the trademark knowledge exam covers knowledge concepts related to foundational trademark knowledge. And we pulled all of that information from the actual competency profiles. So you can see here, it's the same in English and in French. If you scroll down, then you'll see all of the different types of knowledge concepts that could be used to create questions for that section of the exam. Then we have knowledge specific to registrability and strategy, which is about 15% of the exam. We have all of the different knowledge concepts associated with that area of practice. Knowledge specific to prosecution, about 19% of the exam. And then we have knowledge specific to opposition and Section 45 proceedings, which is about 16% of the exam. So again, all of this information really just combined information that's in the technical competency profile with information about test specifications to give you a better conceptualization of the types of things that will constitute different areas of the exam and the types of questions that you might be asked to answer. So for example, in prosecution, we might ask you questions about consent and coexistence agreements, or about office practice, or about ownership issues, or office actions. So that will help you kind of help prepare for the examination. You could even, ask your supervisor or come up with a study group to come up with some like practice questions that are, more practice questions than what we have available that can test your knowledge of these different concepts. So underneath that, we have the actual test specifications. So if you wanted to look at that, but it's pretty much the same information that I just provided to you on the exam in the presentation. If you scroll down a little further, you have the sample knowledge exam questions. So if you click on the first link, sample trademark knowledge exam, then it'll bring you to the actual exam platform. So this is where, as I said, you have access to the instructions for the exam. It's going to be the same instructions that you see on exam day about the exit survey, the exam aid translations, navigating through the questions. All of this information will be the same that you see on exam day, as well as the candidate agreement. So you'll read through all of this information, and then at the very bottom, you'll have an accept or a decline. So if you click on decline, then you're not going to be able to proceed through the exam. If you click on accept, then you can actually, oh, of course, it's not going to work now. Okay, well, it's working in French, so we'll do the French one. You can see here is an example, I'll make the screen bigger, of what it looks like on the platform. You can see the same thing in English. I'll follow up with the provider to make sure that the actual English version is working as well. But here is a sample exam question. You can see the STEM along the top, the 4 response options, the next button, the bookmarking option, the counter in the top right-hand corner. Right now, I haven't answered any of these questions, so they're all in green. But if I were to select a response, then you can see this question has now changed to blue because I have responded to it. It also shows that I've completed 1 out of 15 questions. We can change the font size, so we can make things very, very big, or we can make things very, very small. We can look at the exam aids, and again, you'll have the English and the French version of the exam aids. This is actually just a copy of the exam questions in here right now. If you click on this little notepad feature, then you can write notes to yourself. So this is a test. And then if you click on the exam aids tab, it will then hide that for you again. You can click on the question review button so you can see the questions that you've attempted. I've attempted 1. There are 14 that I've not attempted. I haven't added any to my bookmarks yet, so there's 0 there. And then you can view all of them there as well. So I'll go through, I'll click another answer, I'll click another answer here, I'll add this one to my favorites. You can see now it's listed as my favorites, and if I click on that, it just shows me the questions that I've bookmarked. So you can play around with this on the website and get familiar with the platform and how all of the functionality works. And then if you click on submit, again, it will present you with a little pop-up asking if you're sure you want to submit your exam. If I click on cancel, then it will bring me back to the exam. If I click on yes, then it will allow me to access the survey page. So I'm just going to click on close, and it brings me back to the main part of the website. So the other part that I'm just going to make this small again. So if we scroll down to where the orientation sessions were posted, the registration button will be removed and will actually provide the links to the orientation session recording and the PDF of the exam orientation session right where this register button is. And then we'll shortly be posting the link to the 2026 trademark agent skills exam orientation in the next little while. So for those of you who are writing in the fall, you'll be able to register for that orientation session in the same spot. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now, and then we will jump into the Q&A. So the first question is about working on a laptop. If you're working on a laptop that's connected to another monitor, then during the live proctor check-in, you can check to see if you can set up your computer so that you're only using your larger monitor and your smaller monitor or your laptop is actually closed. That might be something that you can work out with the proctor during the check-in. If that technology works for you, then you're more than welcome to use your larger monitor, but you have to make sure that obviously the exam is still working for you and the proctor can see everything in the room set up properly. The next question is, there are no rooms in my home with blank walls. Is it acceptable to rent a conference room, or is there another way to comply? What you can do is we've had candidates actually cover things with sheets. I know you can't see my background right now because I'm using the CPATA background, but if you have sheets or like white blank pieces of paper like Bristol board or poster board or something that covers stuff on your walls or sheets, then you can do that as well. I would strongly recommend that you write in a setting that you are familiar with and that you have control over with respect to your technology. So if you rent a conference room, or even if you write the exam outside of your home, like in your place of employment, then technical issues are much more difficult to resolve. So I would strongly recommend writing in a place that you're most familiar with and that you have control over in terms of the technology. If you have to write in your place of employment, then I strongly recommend you advise whatever IT team that you have that supports your organization so that they could be on call to assist you with any technological issues that you may experience, such as firewalls or network settings or something like that. And this is why the live proctor check-in is really important, so that you go through all of these issues and you go through everything before the actual exam day and you resolve any issues before the actual exam is being written, or you can come up with alternative arrangements if you need to. Next question is, how long does it take for the results to be released? So this exam is being written May 26th. The patent knowledge exam is being written on June the 9th. Then it takes a little bit of time to do the psychometric analysis, the standard setting, the key validation, and then have all of that go to the registration committee. So the registration committee is scheduled to meet at the beginning of July, and the performance reports and results will be released a few weeks after that. I believe it is the third week of July, but the website will be updated to include that specific date. If it hasn't been updated already, it'll be updated shortly. Next question, can I attempt the exam on my Surface Pro laptop, or is there a limitation to only use standard laptops? That would be something that you should consider when you're doing your live proctor check-in to see if your selected device actually works with the platform and works with all of the various systems that are required. So there are some system requirements that are posted in the information and instructions protocol. If your device meets those systems requirements and it works during the live proctor check-in, then that is something that you can use. However, I would strongly suggest you test everything that you're actually going to be using on exam day during the live proctor check-in week. You mentioned that we will require a username and password to use the testing platform. Will this login information be provided in the registration confirmation email from CPATA? No, it will not be provided by CPATA. It is only provided on exam day when the exam is actually going to start. The only thing that we are providing to you in the exam registration confirmation is your candidate ID, and then details about, if we're releasing results to your supervisor, or if we're releasing results to your firm or office representative, if you have accommodations that are approved, and then the language of choice that you selected for the examination. So all of the login credentials that you need to actually access the exam will only be available to you on exam day once the proctors release them to you after the check-in process. Can I use a USB mouse with my laptop for the exam? Yes, that is something that is allowed. Now, the proctors will go through a Bluetooth check-in as part of the security process to make sure that only a mouse and only a keyboard are attached to your computer and active on your computer in terms of being able to access anything related to the computer. If there are other Bluetooth devices that are connected, then they'll ask you to disconnect those before you start the exam. Okay, if I'm in my basement and the basement is large, but the immediate area around me doesn't have anything around me, is that fine? That's really not something that I'd be able to answer on the spot without having seen the environment that you're writing in. So what I would suggest doing is go through that process when you do the live proctor check-in, just to make sure that your writing environment is appropriate for the exam on exam day. Is it possible to highlight or bookmark exam aid materials? No, unfortunately, anything that's in the exam aids and the PDFs don't have the highlight or bookmark or strike through functionality. You also don't have access to the Trademark Act or the trademark regulations for this examination. That's why we consider it closed book. So you're only going to have access to the notepad feature and the PDFs of the actual exam questions and response options. You do not have access to the Trademark Act or the trademark regulations, and it's also not possible to highlight, bookmark, or strike through anything in the exam aids. That's only available through the exam platform, like the main part of the platform. Do we book the proctor check-in appointment? If so, where should we do this? No, there's no booking necessary unless you need a French proctor. So if you do need a French proctor, then you should contact us as soon as possible so that we can ensure that when you do the live proctor check-in that week, that you have access to a French proctor. Not all of the proctors are bilingual and not all of the French proctors are working.
Sorry, if I may add, if you do need a French-speaking proctor, please let us know the day and time you're available, so we don't play ping pong with emails. And so you can email us saying, "Hey, I need a proctor. This is when I'm available."
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that's for the live proctor check-in week. If you also need one for the exam day, then you can include that information in your email to us as well. I need a French-speaking proctor during the live proctor check-in week. During that week, I'm available on X, Y, and Z dates and times. And then we will work with the proctoring company to try to accommodate those times for you. And you would also indicate if you needed a French-speaking proctor on the exam day as well in that email. All right. I'll wait just another minute or two to see if any further questions come through, but those are all of the questions that I see in the Q&A box right now. While we are waiting for anybody else to type in any questions that they might have, I'll just take a quick moment to thank our administrative team that was assisting us in the administration of this orientation session. So thank you, Andres and Emily and Dana, and thank you to our interpretation team as well. We really appreciate that. And I thank my co-presenter, Sifan. You always do a wonderful job, so thank you again so much. Okay, we do have another question that's come in. So with respect to content, will there need to be knowledge of specific sections of the Act or regulations, or just the content thereof? So if there are what I'll call really important sections of the act or the regulations that you use all the time that are very important to practicing as a trademark agent, then what I would suggest is you familiarize yourself with those sections and the content of those sections. There's no need necessarily to memorize those sections, but there might be a reference to a section in an exam question. And so, the very, very important ones, not the entire act, not all of the regulations, but things that are very important, even those that are specifically called out in the competency profiles, I would say would be a good place to kind of narrow down your familiarizing of those areas. But generally speaking, questions are about core concepts and general understanding. They're not asking you to memorize necessarily specific pieces of information.
And if any of our French-speaking agents in training have a question in French, feel free to type it out in French and I will translate it if needed.
Okay, I'll give you just another minute to see if any further questions come through. If you do think of a question after the orientation session or you're going through the materials afterwards and you come up with a question, then please do feel free to reach out to the registration department and we'd be happy to answer that for you and help you out with that. Otherwise, thank you all very much for your attendance this afternoon and your participation in the session. We really appreciate it, and we wish you the best of luck on the exam administration in a few weeks.
One last
So,
question.
yes, I see that. So, are there any additional sample questions beyond those 15 posted? No, those are the 15 sample questions that are currently available related to the trademark knowledge examination. Okay. Thank you all very much and have a lovely rest of your
Thank
afternoon.
you.
As I mentioned, this recording will be posted shortly and so will the slides. So if anyone has any questions or concerns, you can reach out to us at registration. Have a lovely afternoon and good luck on the exam, everybody. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Good luck.